Ivan Pavlenko, From Family to Family, Chapter 1, Part 2.5, Our Family Tree, read by Natalia Buzova. My mother, when my father was taken to the war, stayed at home with 15-year-old Victor and 2-year-old Oля. I was also in the war, and Maria and Vasil were in Germany. At the age of 40, the mother turned grey and aged. In the difficult and hungry years of 1946, 1947, she lived in Volyn with her daughter Maria, who, after returning from Germany, got a teaching job there. In 1947, the mother returned home. Before retirement, the mother worked in the Garden Brigade. In 1954, she accepted Samila Sergeyevich Padalka, who before the war and under the Germans had been the head of the collective farm, for which he was in prison for 10 years. The mother lived with him for 6 years and broke up. In 1974, the mother sold her house and moved to her son Victor in the city of Donetsk, Rostov region. She lived there for 16 years and died on August the 21st, 1990, at the age of 88. They buried her there in Donetsk and put a cross on the grave. The mother passed away, and it was as if something was broken in our lives. Well, now it's our turn. In the photo, mother, Nastya Mikhailovna, and children, Victor, Ivan, Maria, and Oля. The elder sister Maria appeared tall and physically strong, dark blonde with a freckled face. In childhood, she took care of us, the smaller ones, sometimes slapped us for disobedience and brawling. She studied hard at school, but persistently. After the 9th grade, she was sent to the Lochvitsa Pedagogical School for urgent teacher training courses that were needed for schools in Western Ukraine. However, after completing the courses, she managed to get a job as a teacher of junior classes in Hiltsi of the neighboring Chernuchy district, and a year later she was transferred to the position of the head of the elementary school in Alexandriivny of the same district. The war caught her there. She watched with fear as our troops retreated from Pyryatin in a disorderly manner, as Ride and Witch swarmed around the farm with soldiers and commanders making their way to the east. The school closed, and she returned to the village to her parents. She worked in the communal yard until she was forcibly sent to Germany in 1943. I don't know much about that life as a slave, and she herself didn't like to talk about it. Maria returned from Germany in 1945 with her 1-year-old son Volodymyr in her arms. At first, my sister worked in a collective farm, since she was not given a teaching job because she had been in Germany, which means that she had become infected with a hostile spirit. Then she left for Western Ukraine, where there were not enough teachers. There she was appointed a teacher of primary classes in the village of Chemerin of the Kiversi district in Volyn, and then transferred to the Oleka secondary school. Teaching was difficult and risky, especially in the first post-war years. During the day, she was called a teacher, and at night, armed Bandera people came and made their demands on the children's education. It was forbidden to study textbook texts in which Lenin and Stalin and the Soviet government were praised. Disobedience was threatened with execution. There were cases when individual Komsomol teachers were taken to the forest and never returned. In Oleka, the sister married Stepan Davidovich, who had 2 more sons with him, Leonid and Yuri, as well as the daughter Svetlana. The husband was a jack of all trades, a carpenter, bricklayer, and a shoemaker. With the help of their adult sons, they built a new house in which they still live. Stepan is a guard at an orphanage, and Maria is retired and works as a postman. postwoman. The eldest son of Maria, Volodymyr, lives in Lutsk and works as a bricklayer. His wife, Tatiana, is in trade. They have 4 children and a nice apartment. The second son, Leonid, separated from his parents after marriage and built his own house. He works with his wife in a psychiatric hospital. They have 2 children. They live in harmony normally. Yura's son is my godson. He married the manager of the paramedic midwifery center, Hala. I was at their wedding. They live with their parents, but in a separate half of the house. Yura works as a boat captain's assistant at the Stirhorinsk Water Authority. They also have 2 children. Svetlana graduated from the vocational school at the Darnitsa textile plant after the 10th grade. She also works there as a workshop for women. Her husband works at a factory. They have a son. They live in Kiev. My brother Vasil was born in 1926. He studied unevenly at school and often clashed with teachers, for which he was sometimes scolded by the parents. In childhood, his character was formed vulnerable and sharp, even to the point of embitterment. As children, I, Vasil, and Victor often fought with each other, especially when our parents were not at home. Although I was 3 years older than Vasil, he never got smaller. Once in the middle of a fight, he grabbed a rolling pin, but he didn't have time to put it on my head or shoulders. It, already hovering above me, flew away from my oncoming fist and hit Vasil so hard on the forehead that the skin above his eyebrow burst and blood flowed. We got scared and ran to the first aid station. There, the nurse applied a band-aid and we returned home. On the way, we agreed to tell our parents when they got home from work that Vasil was chopping firewood and a piece of wood hit him on the forehead. Otherwise, the father could whip us all, not distinguishing who was right and who was guilty. In the photo, this is father Ivan Grigorovich, mother Nastya Mikhailivna, and children Maria, Ivan, Victor, and Vasil. At school and on the street, Vasil was nicknamed Chamomile after our cow, which he grazed, and I was cuckoish because of the freckles on my face. In 1943, Vasil was taken to Germany. At the age of 16, he came to a German Bauer landlord. His son was somewhere at the front. The old man did not like the Russian boy for his prickly character and hidden disobedience. He forced Vasil to do hard work, insulted him in every possible way, and threatened him with reprisals. But suddenly he fell ill and died. And Vasil immediately wrote home, "The old dog died," and I was relieved. I don't know how the Gestapo censorship left this saying out of consideration, and when the mother read it, she just shook her head. When our troops entered the territory of Germany in 1945, Vasil ran away from his masters and found himself in the active army and took part in battles. After the end of the war, Vasil served in the army for another 3 years on the border between East and West Germany. This period was full of unusual adventures. Suffice it to say that he was given the rank of sergeant twice, since after the first time he was demoted to junior sergeant for a serious offense. Vasil was brave and decisive in his actions, but he did not always follow the letter of military statutes. People like him, proactive and courageous, as a rule grew quickly at the front, and in peacetime they were more prone to excessive self-activity. So, standing one day on a post, he noticed a group of wild pigs in the thickets. It was a reserve. You couldn't shoot, but he wanted to please his company mates with fresh pork, as officers sometimes did, and he immediately killed 2 wild boars with a gun. The Germans complained to the authorities. The company commander called him and asked, "Did you kill a wild boar in the reserve?" "I did," comrade captain admitted Vasil, knowing that the commanders were not only blameless in this, but also were not against pork. The company commander scolded him for a bit, and then called a truck with 2 soldiers, and Vasil took them to the place of the adventure. There, the boar was thrown into the back of the car, but Vasil was in no hurry to get into the car. "Well, what are you doing, Pavlenko?" shouted the captain. "Sit down, let's go." "Yes," Vasil hesitated, squinting his eyes into the bushes. "Another one. It's over there." "Did you kill 2 boars?" "Yes, so that there was enough for everyone." Vasil excused himself, referring to both commanders and privates. They also threw a second boar in the car. For several days, the company commanders had fun treating officers from other units to fresh pork. Something also got into the soldiers' cauldron. But one sign was removed from Vasil's epaulets, apparently for a report to higher authorities. The culprit was kind of punished. Sometime after that, Vasil became famous throughout the army, and he was not only given back his sergeant's rank, but also rewarded with an accordion and the army headquarters, and given a month's leave home. The divisional and army newspapers, not sparing loud words, described the feat of Sergeant Pavlenko and Private Kasimov, who had detained 5 border violators. How it happened, Vasil told me himself and let me read an article from the army newspaper. I'm quoting his story from memory. "There were 2 of us at the post. I was a senior guard, and my Kazakh partner Kasimov was a part-time guard. There was a telephone in a small trench near our post. Dawn was approaching. I wanted to sleep. To break up my slumber, I walked along the echelon which stood on the railway track near the border, and then leaned my back against it and apparently dozed off. But the machine gun hung from my neck to my hands, and my finger was on the hook. I was standing picking my nose. Suddenly, something clicked. I opened my eyes. There were soldiers in American uniform in front of me. One of them was taking a picture of me. At the same moment, I fired a machine gun over their heads. They fell to the ground out of fright. And one, apparently the commander, was standing with his hands in his pockets. I gave a second turn above him and shouted, 'Hands up!' He somehow reluctantly raised his hands, and then my part-time guard with the machine gun came. I told him, 'Call the commandant's office.' 10 minutes later, our soldiers, led by a mayor, arrived. All border violators were taken away, and later we were replaced by other guards. It turned out that we had detained 3 private American soldiers, 1 corporal, and 1 former native of Lassov, who was a translator for them. Reports were immediately sent to the superiors. We were taken to the headquarters of the division, then to the headquarters of the army. Correspondents swarmed in, asking questions, clicking cameras, and then the newspapers painted us as heroes. They added what had not been there. In fact, we had almost missed those spies. I had just intuitively fired at them with the machine gun, which they had obviously not expected. After all, there had been 5 of them, and I had been one. They had not seen the other guard. Vasil came on vacation, and when he was going from Lochvitsa. Already at the exit from the city near the motorcade, someone called me from behind. I looked around and saw a soldier hurrying after me and waving his hand. I stopped and waited. He came closer. I could already see that the sergeant was slender and taller than me. I looked closely. "Well, don't you recognize?" He smiled. "Are you Vasil?" I recognized the voice and exclaimed in surprise. The last time I saw my brother had been before the war. He had been 14 years old then, and now he was so tall. We hugged, kissed, and went to Yashniki, and behind us was driving a carriage on which lay his suitcase and accordion next to empty water bottles. The rider had told my brother that I had been going ahead, and he had begun to catch me up. No one was waiting for Vasil at home, because he had not had time to write about his granted vacation and arrived suddenly. He went for a walk for several days, played the accordion, and then the temple holiday came to Demetchiha on the spring Michael. We went there with him to visit our father's cousins. Vasil had an accident there. After the feast at Uncle Ivan's, we went outside where young people danced to the accordion and tambourine. Vasil stood aside with Uncle Ivan's Hala, a dark-haired and very beautiful girl. A drunk guy, obviously not knowing that they were brother and sister, clung to Vasil and grabbed him by the chest. And then the unexpected happened. Vasil struck the trailer in the face with a lightning fast, direct blow, and he fell flat on the ground. The guys came. What happened? Hala explained what the matter was, and despite the fact that Vasil was an outsider among the youth, everyone recognized his acts as writer's self-defense. They almost added to the man who had a crush on a soldier, a relative of the girl. "How did you dare to do such a thing in another village?" I asked him later. "After all, it could have been worse. In such a situation, there is no time to think about what will happen next," I had in response. "Here, the main thing is to fight back in time and decisively, to strike so that the attacker does not get up. Then others will think about what awaits them, and my hand is heavy. As soon as I hit, he lies on the ground." Indeed, as I was convinced, Vasil's hands were like the paws of a bear. When someone was embraced by them, the ribs could crackle, and he would not give anybody a damn to spit in his porridge. Strength and courage had been passed on to him probably from his father. According to the memoirs of uncles and fellow villagers, the father had been strong, brave, and hot-tempered. The last feature was characteristic of only one of the uncles. The mother recalled that in her youth the boys on the street had loved to fight, and no one had been able to defeat our father. Once, when he was already 45 years old, Mikhailo Burisenki, who was 15 years younger than our father, had picked on him. After getting drunk, he hit our father, but in response, the father beat him so badly that, according to him, his side still hurt for a week. Vasil finished his service in the army at the end of 1948. He returned to the village, looked at the impoverished collective farm life, and went to Volyn, where his sister was a teacher, to seek a better fate. There he got a job with his accordion, working as a club keeper in the village of Didichi. From there he moved to Sosnivka, Lviv region. There he married Zina, and they got an apartment. His wife Zina is combative, intelligent, and persistent. They have a daughter Zoya and a son Sashko. Zoya married a boy from Tambov and now works with him somewhere in the far north. And Sashko graduated from a mining institute and works at a mine in Sosnivka as a section chief. Already married. I was at a loud wedding. They have two sons, Sasha and Vlad. Vasil and Zina live together, already retired. The apartment is well furnished. Vasil is a sociable man, likes to drink and have fun. He knows many jokes and skillfully tells them. Working at the mine, he graduated from evening high school, non-partisan but well-versed in political life. But in the family, he is too strict, does not tolerate objections, hot-tempered, but comes down soon. He has put on weight in his old age and probably weighs up to 100 kilograms, if not more. Zina is not thin either.